Welcome to the Walking Dead UK podcast. It's Entertainment Talks podcast for The Walking Dead World Beyond on AMC and Amazon. I'm your host Matthew. Joining me today, my co-host is David. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Good. This is for season 1, episode 6, called Shadow Puppets. Just over halfway through the first half of the season. What did you think of this episode?
That's a very on-the-nose title for an episode
yeah.
for a change.
Yeah.
Because it literally opened with shadow puppets.
Yeah.
I like the way this opened and the fact that they tie it into the end of the episode as well, because I thought it was kind of an interesting little thing to start off with anyway, and then, we find out why as we get to the end of the episode. So I like this episode quite a lot, actually. It was... nicely put together. You got some nice pieces in there. You got to find out the who this person was that we saw at the end of the last episode. So they've now got more people involved in the group, which I think is good. There's more chance that they might kill somebody off before we get to the end of the season. Now there's more of them. I thought there was some interesting little set pieces and bits and pieces, and you got these new characters that we get to learn a little bit more about, and overall I was quite happy with where they went with this.
Cool. I like this episode as well. I thought it did some good things in terms of just pushing things forward a bit more. This wasn't kind of another episode of, okay, the group that we're with gets stuck at another building and they have to scavenge it, which I don't mind that idea, but you can only do that so many times.
Yes,
and,
they've got to actually move forward somewhere at some point in the story.
So as much as I love like the scavenging episodes that we've had, like at the school and some of the other places as well, and like with the boat last week, eventually they do have to move forward and meet other characters and actually move on with the world building sort of storytelling and stuff. So I thought it was very interesting to throw, well, in the end, 2 new characters into the mix. I thought that was great. You weren't really sure on their intentions, or if they were lying, or if Elizabeth sent them, or you really had no idea kind of what was going on until they explained the situation. I thought this episode was a bit better in terms of stakes. I think that Iris, kind of falling down and that sort of stuff was fairly good, and just brought a little bit more, just a bit more in terms of danger and stuff, which I know that they've already been in danger in that, but they just felt they did that a bit differently this episode. There's also the whole risk of, like, if these characters did drive off, what would our main group actually have done? Because there was a horde kind of on the way, and Elton's book was in the van, I think, as well, and
right.
All their bags and stuff were there, and they kind of initially tricked them. So I thought that set up some good scenes and things. And speaking of the main part, the shadow puppets, it's very interesting because I remember before it was something that you brought up, which is that this show has kind of dealt more with the start of the apocalypse than what Fear actually did. Because as we've said before, Fear sort of did it for a couple of episodes and then just was like, no, we're going to skip over the rest and then just sort of tell a normal story. Whereas this is kind of dipping into, I mean, the whole thing is about like how we had normal life and then things got kind of literally turned on their head. Normal life as we knew it was kind of turned on its head, and kind of delves into the theme of the whole collapse of society sort of story. So they've sort of told a lot more of that story with this show as opposed to the one that they actually decided to do it within the start. But I'm glad we're getting that anyway, because sometimes that sort of gets a little bit forgotten in a way. I feel like with all 3 of the shows, maybe sometimes. In terms of like just remembering what happened, and that there was normal civilization with these characters at some points. I thought that was great as well. Overall, I thought the episode was paced well, and the rest of it was pretty good as well. So, but I liked what they did this week. And then we of course have you did see the post credit scene,
Yes.
didn't you? Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Mainly delving into the CRM and the experiments that we sort of saw before and everything, which I thought was great. I didn't know there was a post-credit scene, by the way. It's only the fact that on my Amazon thing I skipped forward a bit, and then it showed as I was like skipping through the credits, this like scene sort of popped up, and then I skipped it back a little bit and then watched it from there, because I hadn't seen anybody online mention there was a post-credit scene, because these episodes actually come out on AMC Plus on Thursday. So I was a bit surprised that nobody sort of mentioned that, because I remember when we had the first post-credit scene, and it was sort of all over the internet of like, oh, make sure you watch the post-credit scene, because this one's, well, it's basically a continuation of the first one, and it's certainly as important, so it's a good thing we found that, I suppose. Yeah. But that's pretty much our pre-thoughts on the episode and stuff. Let's get into some housekeeping, and then after that we will dive into the episode. See you in a minute.
Hey there, I'm Aaron Holman, host of Eye to Eye, a weekly podcast talk show all about passion.
I have this passion and this fire within me that burns brighter than the fire around me.
Flow.
With performing, there's always a story to tell, whether it's my own or not.
And creativity.
I go, he's more than cute, he's creative.
All with an LGBT twist. Make sure to check out Eye to Eye, that's EYE, number 2, letter I. And rate and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in today.
I'm Christy.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are Killer Fun. We explore the intersection of crime and entertainment every other week.
For as long as people have been communicating, they have been talking about who did what to whom, and is that socially acceptable?
Because the boundaries of society,
crime,
and entertainment have always gone hand in hand.
The more salacious,
or weird,
the better. From books and movies
to television shows and games,
we look at how life and art imitate and inform one another.
And we can't get together and not laugh. So let's face it, there's going to be laughing.
Killer Fun is available anywhere you listen to podcasts, so join us.
If you'd like to get started with a domain name and a website today, just click on the link in the show notes and that will take you over to Koalu to get started. They also have a live support chat system that you can use, which is in the bottom right hand corner. So get started with a new website and domain name today with Koalu. Hey everybody, if you would like to get the ad-free versions of all of our podcasts and support Entertainment Talk along the way, all you need to do is head over to patreon.com/entertainment talk. Sign up either as a creator or as a Patreon. There's no difference there. That's just the option for either becoming a creator now or just staying as a patron for the moment. And then all you need to do is support us at the $1 level tier. That will get you access to all of the ad-free podcasts that we've done in the past, and get you access to all the ad-free podcasts in that month as well. So it's a great way to support us on Entertainment Talk and to get rid of the ads and get your ad-free podcasts. You can also become a patron at the $3 level tier. That gets you access to ad-free podcasts and allows you to redeem a review of a TV show or a film of entirely your choice. That's one per month for either a TV show or a film review, which is at the $3 level tier. As always, thank you very much for listening. Back to the show. Alright, recently an entertainment talk, gaming talk last night that we did. The Avengers game has popped up again in the news, but not for any good news, as has been the recurring theme for the last, 2 months since the game's been out, pretty much, because it's been out for 2 months now. They've lost a bunch of money on the game, or Square Enix has, and they also didn't sell very many copies of the game, 3 million to be exact, which for a third-party game that's available on the two big consoles, PS4, Xbox One X, or whatever version of Xbox you want these days, is a pretty big loss, considering, Avengers, a pretty big name and all that. But they lost some money on that, and we talked about, me and Robert talked about why we both think that is the situation. Mainly it's because it's a poorly developed game. We also talked about Mass Effect being remastered for next-gen consoles and whatnot. That's due out potentially in the spring of 2021. Could be later than that, could be at that point, we don't know. But yes, EA finally decided to do something good with the Mass Effect games after a little bit of time, and they're going to be remastering them. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that's been added to Game Pass as well, so we talked about a bunch of that. Fear the Walking Dead this week, Season 6, Episode 5. This week's episode, you can get my thoughts on what is happening on one of the other shows for the Walking Dead. Did a Don't Skip review for Enola Holmes, which is the sister kind of spin-off story for her, the Enola Holmes character, of course the sister of Sherlock Holmes. In that particular film, Sherlock Holmes is played by the excellent Henry Cavill, who of course has now played as Superman, Geralt of Rivia, and now Sherlock Holmes just keeps getting good jobs, which is great, because he deserves that as well. And then of course you have Millie Bobby Brown, Elle from Stranger Things, the Netflix show, playing as Enola Holmes. Very good film. Gave it a don't skip rating, not a must see rating, but a don't skip rating. and did a spoiler-free review for that. So that was some fun to do. Manchester United won their last game before the international break. There's about a 2-week international break or something like that. Beat Everton 3-1 away from home, which was good because there was a lot of talk about the manager possibly getting sacked. That could still happen, but not at the moment. He's led off for the moment, I suppose. But the team decided to turn up and win and actually defend properly for a change. Star Trek Discovery Season 3 Episode 4, that's still continuing on Fridays. For us here in the UK, Season 3 Episode 5 will of course be on Friday as well, so that will be continuing. Just before the Everton game, Manchester United did lose 2-1 to Istanbul in a game where our defence didn't want to show up, which was very, very disappointing. Lost to a Turkish team that has never been in the Champions League before, so that was disappointing. But as I said, there's an international break. I'm not sure who we play when we come back, but I'll figure that out at that point. So look out for that in the future, and don't expect any coverage of the England games because I'm not really too bothered. So there's that as well. And that's pretty much everything we've been doing on entertainmenttalk.org and on podcast platforms. The episode begins with Iris narrating how well the world functioned prior to the end of the world, but noting that technology and society did nothing to help them when things ended, because there's this sort of little monologue kind of thing over the top. This is followed by the logo screen thing for the show. Yeah, like we said, kind of showing the story of how the world got kind of turned upside down, and yeah, there's always been questions about this in the world of The Walking Dead, in terms of like, okay, how did the military fail? Again, Fear kind of showed some of that, but didn't really. They showed like the start of the downfall of the military, but not all of it. Because there's always been the case kind of made that sure, these walkers are very dangerous and if they bite you and stuff, but if you look at like a fully equipped army person, how does a walker kind of get in there with that sort of armor and clothing? And it's never that question's never really been answered properly, so I couldn't give you a good answer for that either. But we sort of saw that in Fear the Walking Dead, but you'd kind of think, as the last resort, getting the army in there to sort things out, but just apparently in this story, in all three of the shows, it just never really worked. Plus then they decided to do the bomb thing anyway, which we saw in the Felix flashbacks for this, and we saw it in the first season of The Walking Dead. I don't remember seeing the bomb story being told in Fear, but I remember there was a scene with Shane in the first season where they were like bombing the city and stuff, so obviously that's a big part of it. Yeah, what do you think of kind of delving into a bit of, well, how the world kind of fell apart?
Yeah, interesting way of doing it in the sort of opening, I thought. And yeah, I mean, as you say, it's something that we've not really seen covered all that much, and I would like to see a lot more background about that. I would like to see maybe, one of these extra episodes that we're getting on the main show, or the Tales from the Walking Dead, the anthology thing. Maybe that I would, a couple of episodes of that. It would be interesting to see them set at earlier points. The downfall of the military is one thing which I really would quite like to see a bit more of, because it is something that they've never really explored properly.
Yeah. I think what you could possibly do in one of the, not the bonus episodes, but in one of the anthology episodes, you could follow, not like the entire military, but just follow one little group of them or something, and actually explain like how a group of walkers beats that. Because I get it, if you've got like 5 walkers on top of you, sure, but how does a walker kind of bite through that uniform and stuff? I don't really know. So
yeah, I mean, the only way I can see it happening is if there was a horde of some description, a sizable horde, because even if you are reasonably well armed, hordes are difficult things to fight off. But how would there be a horde there? That an army base, a sort of relatively well protected army base, wouldn't be prepared for. That it's difficult. That unless of course the military is still out there somewhere, but they're just looking after themselves. We don't know really. It's yeah.
Interesting. In the present time, the stranger across the water wants to leave, but Felix sneaks up behind him, so this was continuing from last week's cliffhanger. The stranger reveals his name to be Percy. Later, he sits with the group around a fire and eats while they're talking about people he used to be with, so kind of sort of trying to explain his backstory a bit. He was robbed by them not too long ago. He is headed to Andersonville, I think I said that rightly, to take his things back. Some things just can't be replaced, he says. He points out about his stuff. He's going to head out for it regardless of principle or danger. Percy goes on to tell a story of being trapped on an overpass. He sat on a car roof and waited for the dead to pass. When he opened his eyes, he found a herd of bison crossing the overpass. It was then he decided to survive. They end up catching him in a lie when his facts don't quite line up. Hope is the one to call it out. The people stole his car, not his pack, but he didn't want them to go after his truck too, so he lied. Iris is willing to help get the truck back if he will drive them, and then this is of course leading on to the main part of the episode pretty much. Yeah, what do you think of Percy sort of trying to explain himself and sort of... Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's the old cynic in me, but I mean, the second he walked on screen and said, "Oh yeah, I was with these two guys and they stole from me," I was like, no, that's a way too simple explanation for this for this world. There's no way that's what actually happened. And and then it becomes apparent that he had a car, which, even that is a sort of fairly minor lie, and I was still thinking, yeah, no, this doesn't line up properly. So I was on kind of it was Silas's side, wasn't it? Silas would do it, was very jealous of him, really didn't kind of like him, and I was kind of with Silas on that. I was like, this guy's shady as hell.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, definitely agree with that. It's interesting to see the group interact with somebody other than Felix and Huck, which was good. By the way, Huck not in this episode at all.
No,
so
I rather think we may be getting an episode of Huck next week.
Yeah, I think we're definitely due one, because the next episode will be the 7th, and we haven't got that many. We haven't got that many episodes of the whole show left, let alone the first season. So, but yeah, I thought it was interesting to see the group actually interact with someone else and see just what they would do with a new person kind of entering the group. I thought that was interesting. The next day, the group starts out for the truck on foot. Elton, is taking pictures along the way. Elton reveals to Hope that he was named after Elton John. Hope is on board with helping Elton finish his book as well. I wonder why. Yes, maybe it's because you killed said person that the book is written by. Yeah, because she started it, didn't she? Makes some sense. Again, this is one of the most interesting character sort of things that are sort of happening at the moment, with Hope kind of realizing who she killed, and although Iris knows that she killed someone, I don't think that she knows it was Elton's mum. And again, I think that this will possibly slip out at some point, or do you think there could be a scene maybe where Hope is looking at that book, she has maybe just a particular reaction, and sort of Elton picks up on it maybe, because Elton's a smart young guy, I think, as well. I don't know. It's got to happen at some point, and then they've got to have a confrontation of sorts about it. But
my guess would be that they maybe get to a point where maybe Elton thinks he sees his mother and puts himself in danger to try and rescue the person that he believes may be his mother, and at that point, because he's putting himself in danger to do something which Hope knows isn't true, maybe at that point she fesses up. But because at the moment, as I said last week, there is no benefit to Elton. There's no direct benefit at the moment to Elton other than the fact that he would know his mother was dead. There's no direct benefit to Elton for Hope, and there's certainly no benefit to Hope and the group as a whole for her to fess up to this, other than to unburden herself by the fact that she killed. And again, it was an accident. It was, her life was in danger because, let's not forget, because of the situation. And if I'm remembering correctly, didn't Elton's mother actually shoot Hope's mother?
I think she
Was
did.
it that?
Yeah.
Because Hope had scared the woman, which ended up with the Hope's mum getting shot And so
And then
I mean,
she freaked out and shot her. Yeah.
and then she freaked out and shot. So I mean, it was a tragic situation all round. You can't really, and she was a kid. You can't really blame the kid for that.
And
You know,
I think
Hope as a
Hilton.
kid
I
for
think
that.
Hilton will understand that.
Yeah,
So, I mean, he'll definitely be upset, but I'm sure he'll understand it. So.
yeah. I mean, there is. I mean, that is the other thing, of course. If she's known this for a while, he might be upset the fact that she didn't tell him earlier. But yeah, I mean, I can understand why she wouldn't as well. So
Yeah.
it's sort of, I mean, it's just an unfortunate situation all round, really.
You just got me thinking about something actually, because you said about if Elton thinks he sees his mum later. Do you remember where Hope and Iris's mum and Elton's mum were shot? Was it headshots? Because I can't specifically remember. Because now that you kind of bring that up, I'm thinking if we could see them as walkers at some point, if that's possible. Because if they weren't shot in the head, they would have probably just got up, got up and would have been walking around all this time. I know that's a very long time to be walking around as a walker, but these things still happen. So.
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't be particularly fresh at this point. I mean, they
No.
would have been kicking around for 10 years. So I think it's unlikely.
Yeah,
and
I'm just thinking
if
of that as a
you'd ever
possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible, but whether you'd actually recognise them after that long, I don't know.
Yeah, but that's a possibility. I don't really see a situation. Now, I could be wrong. This is just me guessing and speculating. It's kind of what we're here to do. I don't really see a situation where Elton finds out and he tries to kill Hope or something. I don't really see him doing that. But I don't know. Maybe he snaps or something. I'm not really sure. So we'll see. I already talked about Elton taking the photos. There's not too much to talk about there with him doing that. He's been doing that for a little bit. So Iris jokes with Percy that she is doing better on her journey than he is. She explains that she is out to save her dad. Percy reveals that he has nobody left to save, and Silas doesn't like Percy, which I'm with Silas on that point.
Yeah.
As well, I think. Later, the group arrives in town. They spot some movement and hide from the truck. The group tries to come up with a plan. Silas is on the side of caution. Percy goes into Hotwire truck with Felix. He finds the guy who took the truck has been shot in the head, or has he? In the driver's seat. Percy goes to find the keys. Felix directs the group to the campsite. Felix goes with Percy and Hope as well. And then we'll talk a bit more about this whole big set piece sort of thing. Yeah, interesting. I've never seen someone... I mean, it gets explained later on that this was a trick or whatever. But, I mean, to me it looked like a headshot. And the group did as well. And they kind of just pushed this seemingly just dead guy out of the truck. Because that's one thing you don't have to worry about in this world, is if you see a dead body but there's a headshot wound or that the brain's clearly been damaged, you haven't got to really worry. The point where you have to worry is if there's a dead body but no clear head wound, because then they could wake up and eat you. So what do you think of the thing with the truck here with the headshot and all the fake headshot and stuff?
Well, yeah, I mean, at the time it looked perfectly real, and Percy's story still seemed to be holding together. I still didn't entirely trust him, but I thought maybe Percy was working with this supposed other guy that they had with them, and although the guy in the truck had been shot, maybe Percy was working with the other guy, and that was what they were doing. But yeah, I thought this was an interesting little twist that sort of gets revealed a bit later on. But looked perfectly legitimate to me as far as I could see. So.
Yeah, because nobody's tried that before in one of these shows.
No.
To sort of fake being dead. Usually you got a head wound or whatever, and that's it pretty much. So they did a very convincing job with what they were trying to do. So you got to give them some credit for that, I guess.
Yeah.
Felix heads to the building where Percy is hiding. Inside, they look for Mike. Elsewhere, Iris decides to go in with everyone. Silas tries to convince her not to. He ultimately decides to try to help her by offering directional advice. Iris finds Percy. They go to check out the upstairs. Outside, Elton explains to Hope that her dad convinced him to finish his manuscript. Hope suggests they focus on instead of talking. Good idea, certainly. Meanwhile, Felix kills a walker upstairs. Percy takes the lead. He finds the people with his stuff and sends Iris back. Everyone hears a gunshot. Iris doesn't run. She finds empty bags. Outside, Tony's not actually dead, and he takes all of their stuff along with the truck, and Hope chases it, but obviously she can't catch it. So, yeah, lots of stuff to talk about here. Yeah, Iris, falling off the... What did you think when she did fall over or fall off this roof thing?
Well, yeah.
Bit annoying.
I mean, yeah. And, I mean, Iris even going after them was a stupid idea in the first place. But, they're kids. They're not exactly the most sensible people in this show. So,
did you sort of feel like this was Felix to the rescue again? Because, I mean, he opens this big bin thing or whatever it is and, saves Iris, and then, because you'd have to think in a scene like this, if Felix had turned around, episode or 2 episodes ago, they probably would have at least lost one of the kids in this episode. What do you think of that? I mean, it's probably true, isn't it? So.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think if there was no way Felix was ever going to abandon them, but and that's sort of what he's there for. He's there to protect them. So the fact that he has to bail them out at various points is no great shock, I don't think.
So yeah, Hope and Silas kind of being a bit wiser in this situation, kind of the ones that are trying to concentrate a bit more, and then Iris is kind of going off and stuff. What did you think when you heard the gunshot? Did you think that somebody or the person that they were looking for had shot Percy at that point?
I did wonder maybe if that's where they're going with it. If Percy was just going to be a single character thing, but again, I wasn't entirely on board with this kid. He seemed untrustworthy, so I wasn't entirely sure. But it would seem like it would have seemed if they'd shot him to be a bit of a waste of that character. I just wasn't quite sure what was going on. Clearly something was happening, but yeah, I hadn't twigged that that's where they were going with it. Yeah.
What did you think when Tony's driving off and it just looks like it's all doom and gloom for the group, I guess, because their stuff's in that truck and Percy looks like he's kind of betrayed them at that point, and the Tony trick and all that sort of thing.
Which he had.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of those things that when you got a show like this, you kind of know they're going to turn it around. It's unlikely they're going to get completely abandoned and not have anything. I mean, we've seen sort of that thing on a main show, but if that was the case, you would have ended the episode at that point.
Right.
If that had come right at the end of the episode as a sort of cliffhanger into the next episode, then yes. But the fact that it's sort of midway through, you're like, oh, well, they're going to turn this around by the end of the episode,
Yeah. I've got the sisters figured out finally, by the way, which one's which.
Yeah.
Have you worked that out, which one's which?
Yeah, I think so. Occasionally flips backwards and forwards, but yes.
Yeah, so that's good. Iris sees Percy fleeing. Hope can't get to the truck because, of course, a human being can't really trace a vehicle.
Yes.
Sometimes maybe, but not really. Iris is stuck in a dumpster with a couple of walkers. Felix gets it open and kills one, just saving her just in time. Percy saves her from the other. Tony pulls up and tells them all to get in, so they have a change of heart, because they could have just drove off, left them there, and I don't know if they all would have died, but they would have definitely been in some sort of danger. Yeah, what did you think of them turning around and actually sort of changing their mind? Were you a bit more on board with them at that point?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, they're scam artists. They're not murderers. You know, that now we get to see sort of a bit more of what they are. And I do like the two characters. I think they're an interesting pair,
I
and they're
agree,
slightly
yeah.
different. And I like. It's not something we've really seen before. Is sort of the out and out kind of con artist sort of thing. We've seen people try to pull tricks on people before, but not a sort of magician level of
Sure,
illusion
yeah.
and stuff, which I quite like, as this is an interesting kind of addition to this. So yeah, I think it shows that there is a certain amount of character. They're doing what they feel that they need to do, but at the end of the day, they're not murderers. So
Do you think some of the older audience that has been struggling to connect with the show because it's based off of YA bunch of characters, young adult characters, do you think they'll maybe look to Tony and Percy a little bit more? I know that Percy's, I think, probably a bit younger than Tony, but they're both like slightly older characters. Do you think that will help that audience a bit more? Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a YA show. It's aimed at young adults. This series, I think, but you've got a lot of YA drama that crosses these boundaries, and I think completely focusing on the kids has been a bit of an issue if you're trying to broaden the audience. So I think having a couple of slightly older characters in there will probably help.
Definitely. So we'll see. Later, the group holds Percy and Tony hostage. They try to decide their next move, which is freeing them. The man reveals himself to be a magician, which is what you were just talking about a second ago. Expert in sleight of hand, illusion, card tricks, and other things from his Las Vegas performances. Later, Percy tries to get forgiveness from Iris because he almost sort of got her killed. Percy says she's the first person to see him as someone worth saving, which is why he came back, and he wants to be more like her. So a bit of forgiveness in the scene, which is good because a couple of people almost got killed. Iris most notably, from falling into the dumpster thing. Yeah, seems like they're a bit more on board. I don't know if they've maybe got another trick up their sleeve, but just judging by the end of the episode, it seems like they've sort of settled in, I suppose. And like you said, we've got a very different kind of character on our hands here with Tony, which is cool. So yeah, how do you feel about them sort of trying to settle into the group a bit more, and Percy looking for a bit of forgiveness?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they came back for them sort of turns it around, and there won't be a full level of trust there. But the thing with the main kids is they are somewhat naive, and so it's nice to have a couple of new characters who have been out in the world a bit longer. I mean, the thing is, even with somebody like Felix and Huck, they have been out and they have seen things, but they've also been in this rigid kind of structure of this community. So, whilst they have seen more, they're not what we're used to seeing in the Walking Dead world, which is people just out in the world trying to get by. So it's sort of quite nice having these two new characters that are more experienced of just life on the road.
Yeah.
And I think having that is useful to the group as well. And the fact that they're sort of, they've got these kind of scams that they can pull, I think it brings an interesting different edge to the group as well.
Yeah, definitely. Hope tells Elton that she wants to read his mum's book. You should probably stop doing that because it will remind you of the mistake that you unfortunately made when you were younger. She opens it and looks at his mum's photo. Again, this is the second or third time she's done it, remembering that she killed her. Kind of torturing herself a little bit, I suppose. I mean, sure, she feels bad that she did it, and she realizes that it was the mother of, one of her closest friends and somebody that she's currently trying to survive with. But she's kind of accidentally torturing herself here by just putting herself back in that situation. I know we've already talked about this a little bit, given the start of the episode and stuff. But yeah, what do you think of Hope just continuing on this path, I suppose?
Well, she is. She's going to continue torturing herself with it and bottling it up. And eventually, yes, it is obviously going to come out at some point. I'm just interested to see how they end up revealing it, because, as I said before, there is no benefit to it other than the fact that, and there's certainly no benefit to Felix right now, other than he would know for definite that his mother is dead. But for the integrity, Elton, sorry,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
Get characters mixed up. I was reading things at the same time. So there's no benefit to Elton knowing that right now either, other than maybe getting some closure. But it's just going to sow discord in the group. So, it's not as a huge amount of use to anybody at the moment.
Mm-hmm. I just don't really see Hope planning to tell Elton this at some point, like actually sitting him down. I think it's just going to slip out at some point, or I don't know. I can see that not going.
I think
going
it's going to come out at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think by the season finale or before the season finale?
I would say maybe by the season finale.
Yeah. There's a way they could do that in a really bad cliffhanger way, where like it's revealed and then they look at each other and they both kind of have the realization. You kind of end the season there. That would I wouldn't like that, I don't think.
No.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes, but they still have some episodes left to sort that out. Felix explains that he wants the truck. Tony wants to know about Felix's insignia. I think I said that correctly. He shows the logo is hidden on the truck as well, and he knows there are more CRM people and vehicles nearby. Felix says that the patch can keep them out of trouble. Tony is ready to go for the ride in that case. Couple of reveals here, really. Tony knowing about this CRM thing, and obviously we know that Felix is involved with it anyway, so that wasn't really part of that. But yeah, him kind of talking to him about it and revealing it to him, and it's interesting in a time sense here as well, because you've kind of got the logo hidden under this thing on the van, as if like he's maybe tried to hide it or something, or it's been there a long time and he sort of covered it up. So there certainly isn't like any sort of fresh vehicle or anything like that. So yeah, it's kind of interesting they decided to reveal that, and it's a good little way again, which I know they haven't done a massive amount with the CRM, but it's a good way of sort of nodding back to it a little bit and actually connecting this new character to Felix with it, and sort of revealing that he knows about it in the first place. I thought was quite good. What do you think of that?
Yeah. The CRM is sort of the slow drip feed that we're going to get throughout the entire series, I think. And, I mean, it would make sense if the end of this season has some sort of big CRM reveal in it. But, yeah, I mean, the truck... Do they actually explain where the truck came from, or does he...
No, I think he just said to Felix, like, it's on this thing, and I kind of know about some nearby vehicles and that kind of thing. So we don't know exactly how they got hold of the truck in the first place. Yeah, because it doesn't mean they're a part of the group. It just means they possibly just picked it up from somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't know exactly, other than he knows something about them. So I think that might be an interesting reveal moving forwards. I mean, Tony seems to be a bit worried about the CRM, and the fact that he's asking about the badge, and he sort of says, will this keep them out of trouble? And so that's going to be an interesting thing to explore as we move forward.
Definitely. Yeah. At night, Tony performs for everyone. He shows a shadow puppet show showcasing the world before it ended and what happened as it went down, sort of bookending the episode, I suppose. It ends with a family forming, kind of signaling that there's a new family here, I suppose. We've already talked about the shadow puppet thing. It's a cool way to show a bit of backstory for it. Bit of a different way to do that. We haven't really seen... There's two things in this episode that they use that we haven't really seen before. First of all is like fake injuries, and second of all is like shadow puppet shows. I know they've had like the cinema stuff in the main show recently in either season 10 or season 9. I think it was in season 9 with like the projector and that, but we've not really had like a shadow puppet thing. So two new things we kind of saw in this episode, which is kind of cool. Any thoughts on just the ending of the episode? Not the post-credit scene, but this little end piece.
No, other than it was kind of quite nice just to see that style of thing I do wonder. Just from a technical point of view, I'm kind of interested to know whether they did actually build shadow puppets for it, or whether that was all done with CGI. But
maybe, yeah.
I'm not sure. But my guess is they probably built an actual shadow puppet show for it. But
wouldn't be very expensive, I don't think. So
no, I think that would probably be the cheaper way to do it.
Right.
But yeah, I thought this was sort of interesting. It tied it in nicely to the sort of opening, and it's got quite a nice style to it. And it was surprisingly emotional the way that they managed to do that. I thought it worked really well.
Cool. So that's the end of the episode. There is a post-credit scene. If you have not seen said post-credit scene, you should probably pause this podcast, go and watch it, and come back. I'm not going to do a whole spoiler section warning thing. I'm just going to mention that it's in there. We've already mentioned it anyway, but go and watch the post-credit scene if you haven't done so, either on your AMC thing or Amazon or whatever. Sunday's The Walking Dead World Beyond Shadow Puppets ends with a post-credits scene returning to the Civil Republic research facility where the shadowy organization is conducting experiments on empties located somewhere in New York State, which is where they're trying to head to. The main group that we've got. The lab is where Dr. Leo Bennett, Joe Holt, I think that's the actor that plays them, of the Nebraska Campanus colony is away as part of a months-long science exchange with the Civil Republic, supposedly to develop a cure to the zombie virus. Its location on the coded map is that Civil Republic military Elizabeth secretly passed to Leo's daughters, Iris and Hope, just before Kublex forces massacred almost 10,000 of the survivors in the campus colony. In this second post-credit scene, CRM scientist Dr. Lila Belshaw, played by Natalie Gold, opens a drawer and pulls out advanced immunology, What to Know in the Age of the Unknown, written by Bennett for the Nebraska State University research laboratory. Tucked inside is a hand-drawn card signed by Bennett's teenage daughters, who are leading a trek to New York with Elton and Silas. Comparing their journey, on their journey with them is Huck and Felix, whose boyfriend Will is away with Bennett as his security detail. Bennett is pictured in the photograph on Belshaw's desk, as is Dr. Samuel Abbott of Portland, Oregon, the bearded scientist turned science experiment whose corpse we saw in the 104 Wrong End of a Telescope episode. Belshaw receives a phone call from Kublek answering, "Hello, yes, I'm still working on that, but of course it will be taken care of by the time they arrive. Dr. Bennett won't be a problem. His security detail won't be either, of course." And it says thank you, hangs up the phone. They is the group moving forward towards the research facility now with the help of Grifter Percy and his uncle Tony, who possesses a truck with enough fuel to get them to New York much quicker. They'll need to hurry because of everything that's happening. So the stinger ends with Belshaw looking out into what appears to be the same space, where a zombified Abbott, along with dozens of other empties labelled as A, because they had the whole A-B thing before, were muzzled and restrained. We don't see any empties, but we hear the sound of them groaning, and then it cuts to black. So interesting bit on the phone call side of this. I know there's a lot of information there, but the whole yes, I'm still working on that, but of course it will be taken care of by the time they arrive, and Dr. Bennett won't be a problem. So that's their dad, isn't it? Yeah, because Hope and Iris Bennett, and his security detail won't be either. Again, this is dipping into the CRM thing and kind of the bigger picture of what's going on. What did you think of this post-credit scene?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting seeing a little bit more of this. As I say, they're drip-feeding the CRM stuff out. We don't know what's happened to the dad, but what we do know is that one of the other scientists on that group clearly something had gone terribly wrong, because he'd been turned into the reanimated corpse that we saw last week or the week before.
Yeah,
so
episode 4, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it doesn't really give you a whole lot more other than the woman that is what is it, Lydia or Leah or whatever her name is, the Dr. Belshaw. Who's doing the experiments seems to have been pressured by somebody higher up into doing what she's doing. It's very difficult to tell exactly.
But certainly some more shady stuff going on here.
Yeah,
obviously.
It's certainly not all above board by the sounds of it.
Definitely, yeah. And just before anybody asks me, I'm going to answer a question before somebody asks me. In terms of this whole zombie cure, which is one of the things that's been talked about throughout the whole of the Walking Dead franchise, like the comics and the games, the shows and whatever. I don't know if they go that route at the end of the comics. There's just the sort of end part of the sort of the last story arc of the comics that I haven't read, so I don't know if they dip into that. I didn't hear that they did do that, but that doesn't mean the show can't do it, I suppose. Because this whole CRM group, like the helicopter and all that, I don't recall them being in the comic book either. No. But of course you have the Commonwealth group that they just met, which is doing similar sort of things, not in terms of the zombie virus, but other sort of military-esque kind of practices. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see, because now that they've actually kind of set up for the first time in this franchise in terms of the TV world. I know the comics is still adapted, but it's a different universe. Be interesting to see where they go with that. And now that you've got, well, all three of the shows are connected to this group. You've got the Rick films, which are very, very, very likely to be connected to that because he's been basically taken here, not to this facility, but to the other place as well. Where they kind of go with that, and I'd be very curious to see, well, Robert Kirkman's thoughts on this. You know, the guy that created this whole thing to begin with, and where they kind of go with it. Because I think, what was it? I think somebody's asked him in the past, like, did you ever think about going with like a Cure story, and it just never really was something he maybe wanted to do. So it's a bit of a very different kind of direction, because the Cure's a very, very big deal in something like this, and the show's done it where I don't think the book has. So they're kind of in a little bit of uncharted territory in a way.
Well, yeah, but we don't know that they are. I mean, they're working on a cure, surely.
It's been mentioned, yeah. Here.
Yeah, I mean, it's been mentioned that they're working on a cure, but surely that would be expected. We don't know that it actually works.
Right. I'm just saying the book never really did that, so.
Yeah, no, and I mean, the problem is, if you come up with a cure, you're limiting how far the series can go by doing that. Because if you've got a cure, it does sort of would give you characters which, or I mean, it might not be a cure, it might be some sort of something that you can use to vaccinate against being turned, which makes the getting bitten a lot less dangerous. I mean, you could still die, but if you die and don't turn, or if you get bitten and don't turn, then it gives you a massive advantage. So, but you do also have the problem that there is no central government. There is no way of distributing it.
Yeah, because the world's just spread out and damaged.
Yeah, because what was the other zombie show that was Z Nation?
Z Nation, yeah.
Z Nation had a thing with a cure in it, didn't they? And but they, I mean, so they had that problem. You have that problem as well. Even if you have a cure, how do you get it out to everybody?
Because you don't have a society, do you? So.
Yeah, and also in that sort of thing, if some random bloke or some random group of heavily armed people turn up at Alexandria and say, with a bunch of needles, and say, "Hey, we've got a cure for the virus," would you honestly trust them to just like?
Yeah, you're dealing with a very different society, as opposed to at the moment with like COVID, we have a running society and government where you could actually do that stuff realistically.
And we have checks and balances, and if the CDC, if a vaccine comes out for COVID, if it's all kind of approved, and the World Health Organization says yes, this is safe, you're going to go, well, okay, yes, but then with something like this, if you've just got this kind of shadowy group of people that just turn up on your doorstep and go, hey, we've got this
put
cure.
these needles in your arm,
put these needles in your arm. You might be a little bit more, listen to them certainly, but you might be a little bit more wary about it, because there's no central government, there's no way of verifying it, there's no, it's an much odder situation for that. And plus, there is no way of getting that message out to a whole bunch of people at once. So
because you don't have like news feeds.
And you've got the added problem that there are still millions, presumably, of zombies still wandering out there. So there is still a danger. But if you put a cure into the world, that does potentially it either drastically alters the direction of the story, or it potentially limits the length of the story. It does give you an endpoint to go towards, but as we've spoken about before, AMC are not letting this franchise die, so that they're going to be keeping on going for this, and we know at least
it's their long-term franchise, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's a long-term franchise for them. We know that although the main show's finishing in 2022, they've got another show coming in 2023. In fact, they've got a couple of new shows coming in 2023. So there are still stories you can tell in this world, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether they will go down the kind of cure route or not. It's difficult to say at this point.
Yeah, I've always had not the same type of problems with the cure, but you can't just simply put a cure into this world and have it work. One of the other reasons, at least to me, something I've always kind of thought about, which is, how do you actually end a zombie story, I suppose, as well. And one of the other problems that you've got is, okay, if you've got a cure and you put it in and it stops you turning, like you said, problem one is you've still got walkers that can just rip you to pieces. If you've got a walker that, I don't know, bites you in the neck, I'm not saying rips your throat out, but like bites you somewhere in your neck, like if you can still die from walkers through like fatal injuries and stuff. I understand, okay, if you get bitten in the arm and you've got a bite mark and stuff and you can cure it that way, but there's only specific circumstances where that's actually going to work until you actually get to a situation where, okay, you somehow kill all the walkers that are at least near you so that your local place or whatever is kind of safe, and then any sort of non-fatal injuries you can maybe cure those. But there's, if you end up traveling or something, or you run out of supplies, which is still just a different issue, and you have to move, and then there's different walkers there maybe. There's just other things that kind of connect to it that just, you can't just be, okay, here's a zombie cure, done, the world is sort of saved. It won't really work like that. But again, it's up to this show to give us the answers as to how this is going to even go. So, I suppose. And that's up to Matt Negrete, the showrunner, to figure all that stuff out. So, and that's the actual end of the episode. Get some growling zombies, and we cut to black. And I guess we'll revisit the group next week. We have a couple of emails and questions and stuff, a couple of which are through different Walking Dead Facebook groups, of which there are quite a few, as you can imagine. Big fan base still, so you can search for some of those. But the email that we have this week, of course, if you want to send in your thoughts, feelings, questions, comments, maybe concerns about any of the Walking Dead shows or anything related to Entertainment Talk, Matthew at entertainmenttalk.org, Twitter, eTalkUK, there's a contact page and information in your show notes. Teresa, hey fellas, are you surprised that no characters have died yet? Not particularly. I mean, it's good that some of these characters have been put in significant danger, because, well, if you're doing a show like this and you're not putting your characters in danger, then you're just not really doing much with them. But we had, Iris almost die this week. We've had a couple of the other characters have close calls with walkers. So it's been interesting in terms of the stakes and how they've kind of leveled things out a bit. But I'm not really surprised that they've died yet. This doesn't really feel as much of a show that's maybe going to be focusing on that as much. I mean, somebody will probably die eventually. I'd be surprised if all 6 of these characters, our main 6 characters, survive the whole series. I think at least one or two of them will die. But I don't know. At the moment, they need to, tell this CRM story and just keep developing these characters. We've only had 6 episodes, and a couple of which we still don't have backstory for yet. They're doing a very good job with the backstory and stuff, like the way they told the Felix thing, and Hope and Iris' stories, and Silas's thing, and Elton's backstory, and how that connects to Hope and her sister Iris as well, with the whole mother thing. So they've done a good job with what they've done so far. It's still quite early yet, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not convinced. I mean, whilst we've said before, if you are going to kill one of them, Silas would seem like the obvious one to kill off, because there's no attachment to. He's basically there as kind of muscle, and he is an integral part of the group, but he's the one out of the 4 kids that you could lose quite easily, and you could lose either Huck or Felix as well, potentially. And we've got these 2 new characters. You could potentially kill one of them, but I don't think it is. I'm not hugely surprised that core group hasn't lost any members yet, because it's not. It's an ensemble show, but it has a very core ensemble group. Unlike the wider Walking Dead shows, things like Fear and things like the main show, where there are a lot of characters. There are a lot more red shirts you can kill off on that show as well. So you lose some of the peripheral characters, but with this, they are very much an integral part of it, and it's also limited to 2 seasons as well. So whilst I'm not entirely convinced that everybody, every one of the main cast will make it right through all 2 seasons, I think I'm not even convinced that they'll necessarily kill off one of the main cast in this first season. I think maybe something that will happen towards the end of the second season, but I mean, maybe they will, but it doesn't feel like that sort of show to me.
Yeah. This is quite a different model of show for them to go with, because this has got an end date, which I know the main show has had, but this had one from the start. This had a model of 2 seasons. We're going to tell this story, and then we'll kind of go from there. And yeah, in this show at the moment, there is no red shirts to really kill off. There's none of them. Even like in the main show, where they have smaller characters that have names that you kind of recognize, those sorts of characters that tend to die. We've very much just still got 6 core members of the group. So no, I'm not surprised that any of them aren't dead yet. We've then got 3 different comments from some Facebook groups, so I'll read those out. Tom says, sorry, how did the entire US military lose to zombies? We did kind of talk about it a bit at the start. We don't have a clear answer for you. It would be better to ask Robert Kirkman, something like that, and see what he makes of that, because it happened in the comic books as well. The same thing, the US military lost, and they are in the situation that they're in. So, you'd have to ask Mr. Robert Kirkman about that. But just, I mean, the only answer I can kind of think of is just some sort of getting overwhelmed, really, because that's pretty much what would have to happen. So
and I mean, I do find it slightly unbelievable that the entire military complex got completely overwhelmed. But maybe, I mean, I struggle to envisage what the situation was. Because as I say, the only way you could really do it is if you could only really do it if it was a horde, because it would need to be that many.
Yeah.
I can see small pockets getting overrun, but I don't know. It's weird.
Do you think there's possibly still US soldiers out in the world, but they just, because their groups maybe been depleted, or they ran out of ammo, or got kind of overwhelmed that way? So there's possibly still some military people left, but just not in an established military group, possibly as well. So
I mean, that's potential.
Nicole says, why did he not know how to fight walkers? The kids had to come in, yet he was their teacher. I think she's talking about Felix in this situation. So this is feedback from episode 4, not episode 4, episode last week's episode 5, the one with the boat and stuff. Yeah, it was we talked about that on the podcast. It was a weird moment for Felix where he sort of did this fishing rods thing up around the trees and then kind of just stood there. It was a bit of a strange moment. I kind of just think it was a bit of sort of, right, we want these, Iris and Hope to kind of come in, kill a couple of walkers and sort of alert Felix a bit more to the situation. It was a bit strange, but it was what it was, I suppose. Any thoughts on that?
No, not really. Not over what I've already kind of said on that. Yeah.
Barb says, I knew that pocket fisherman thing would come in handy. It's good that you spotted that, I suppose, in the episode. It's got me, when I sort of pre-read these comments and stuff, kind of got me thinking a little bit. Other times that they've used things like wire or any kind of trip mechanic in the show. There was that episode, I think it was a season 7 episode. You remember when Rick and Michonne, they got in a car each. They had that like line, I don't know if it was a fisherman line or whatever it was, and then they put it across this like motorway thing. There was like there was a horde of walkers, and then they basically drove forward so that the wire would sort of cut through the walkers. That's the other time that's kind of been used, but yes, things like that you could kind of use a bit more, I suppose, just to simply trip walkers up. It's interesting as well because in the Walking Dead game that I'm playing at the moment, the Walking Dead Onslaught game, which has Rick, Michonne, Daryl and Carol, between the loading screens it kind of gives you little tips and stuff about like you might want to do this and that with supplies or whatever. And one of the tips that came up the other day is try to shoot the walkers in like the foot or in the legs so that they trip up a little bit. And if you actually have what was it I picked up the other day, like a machete or something, and there was this walker that came up to me in VR with like one of them helmet things on, so I basically couldn't stab him through the front of the head, and I had to sort of go like under his chin and that. But one of the other things I did, because I was kind of accidentally missing a little bit, I ended up chopping his arms off. And I think, what was it, the other thing I tried to do? I think I shot or cut one of the other walkers' legs, and that kind of made them like fall on the floor a bit, and then I just kind of walked away from it. So yeah, tripwires could be maybe used a little bit more in this world, because we've seen 2 instances where that's been used, this one with Felix and the Rick and Michonne one that I mentioned. Any thoughts on those sorts of tactics, I suppose?
No, I mean, there are multiple ways of that you could potentially protect yourself from hordes which possibly they don't use, things like the tripwires, and we've seen them use sound wires to alert them to distractions, and to also to surround camps so they're alerted should anybody come nearby and that sort of stuff. So we've seen them used in that ways as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are many ways you could kind of take down a horde. One thing that we've said before with the zombie threat is the fact that they are incredibly slow, and they're not particularly bright. So it's only in large numbers that,
when you get kind of crowded or something.
When you get crowded, that they're really a danger. So there are other ways you could get around it, I'm sure.
I've learned that recently in first person as well. Don't let them get behind you, because being grabbed by a walker in VR from behind is not particularly fun. So yeah. But yeah, that's one of the things that interests me about the zombie set pieces is like what weapons are the characters going to use, how are they going to use them, and how are they going to like get their way out of that situation. So very, very interesting stuff. We'll be back next week to talk about the next episode. Again, we have how many more for this season? 7, 8, 9, 4 more?
If we're on
4 more.
Like
we're in the second half of the season, so we'll be back next week to talk about the next episode. Of course, look out for the Fear podcast as well if you want my thoughts on that season so far. Some very interesting stuff happening over there. If you want all the rest of our content in the meantime, it is of course available on entertainmenttalk.org. TV, video game, films, and Manchester United podcasts as well. If you like what you've heard today and you'd like to get involved for supporting Entertainment Talk or just getting involved in general, there's lots of different options for you. Patreon, you can have a look at the $1 and $3 level tiers for instant ad-free podcast and review options. Amazon affiliate link if you're buying those Christmas presents or treating yourself or potentially getting a PS5 or an Xbox or whatever the situation may be. We can get a small cut of what you spend. It won't cost you extra. Podcast services, you can search for Entertainment Talk on your favourite podcast platform. You can subscribe to us on there, and if we're not on your favourite podcast platform, please let us know. You can also search for Geektown on podcast platforms. That's David's Geektown News website. Geektown Radio episodes available on Tuesdays. This week's episode is available to be listened to. Geektown.co.uk and Geektown Radio on podcast services. Look out for that as well. Bex is streaming daily at the moment over on Twitch. If you search for Trista Bytes, Trista Bytes, go and follow her. Subscribe to her over there for all the stuff that she's doing on Twitch. I'm streaming as well on Twitch. If you'd like to see me fight some walkers in first person, unfortunately without the face cam thing because that gets used for some reason, or if you'd like to see me play some other games, the PES Master League stuff or anything else related to that, if you search for eTalk UK on Twitch, I have changed the username thing, so you can search for that on there and follow me on Twitch as well. Word of mouth, you can tell people that you know about Entertainment Talk, Trista Bytes and Geektown. Social media, same thing, but Facebook, Twitter and different Facebook groups, and look out for Let's Play Sunday episodes as well. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.